What's up guys, my name is Ace, and in this final episode we're going to be looking at player psychology while trying to go for chem strikes. We're going to get into enemy psychology, but more importantly, what is going on in your head when you're going for a chem strike. Welcome to KEM Tactics. Alright, so let's start it off with the enemy psychology, and then we'll get into the more important part, which is what's going on in your brain while you're trying to earn a chem. So for enemy psychology, everyone plays a little bit differently, but certain behavioral patterns tend to exist for the average player. You always want to be paying attention to these patterns. So things to look for are popular areas that people like to travel through or maybe camp in all the time, and I'm talking like every single game kind of thing. And the first example that comes to my mind is the ridge above the C flag on Overlord. If the enemy holds the C flag, I'm constantly checking that ridge for enemies, because over time, as I played that map, I've found that almost every time I look at that ridge, there's an enemy there. And that's just something that I've developed in my mind over time. It does take experience, and now I know why that is. There's a really popular spawn that funnels enemies through that ridge, and it's also a pretty good vantage point, although it doesn't offer you a whole lot of cover. So every time I play that map and I have enemies at the C flag, I'm always focused on that ridge, and I'm often guaranteed consistent free kills on those guys. So it's things like this that really just come with a lot of experience, and just make sure you're always paying attention to these sorts of patterns, because it could be easy to just ignore them. If you're paying attention to them though, you can learn how to take advantage of them in the future. Now that's all very general enemy psychology. Let's get a little bit more specific. In the beginning of each game, I always try to get a feel for how my enemies play and react to certain situations. I often start my games a little bit reckless just to see if the enemies will adapt, and sort of to find out how much I can get away with these particular enemies. If they do adapt, or if they shut me down right away, I'll start to assume that they have a certain level of skill or knowledge with the game, and I always keep that in mind while making decisions throughout the rest of that game. There's no set formula for this, it's basically just paying attention to your enemy's behavior and general skill level. So some things you might look for are they really skilled at face-to-face gunfights, or do you feel like you can initiate gunfights against these guys with confidence? Another thing to always consider is what types of guns are your enemies using, because this often plays a big role in how they behave and how they react to certain situations. Do they have that one sniper on their team that always seems to like locking down that one particular line of sight? Or is the entire team running around with SMGs? Each type of player will tend to react in their own way. One more big thing to keep in mind is, are they rushing or are they camping, and do they like certain spots or areas of the map? These are all things to consider while you develop sort of a profile for the enemy team, and I do this every single game I play. So just as an example for you guys, let's look at the beginning of this gameplay that you're watching. It is one of my slower chem strikes, but I see it as great for illustrating the topic in the video. So I started with a very aggressive opening route where I discovered that at least a couple players on the enemy team seemed to lack gun skill and reaction time, or maybe they were just lagging, but that's also very important to keep in mind. Either way, I learned that I could feel generally confident against them in face-to-face gunfights. I also learned that they used a very common and predictable route to get straight to the B flag from A, which tells me they'll likely continue to behave in a predictable manner by pushing straight towards the B flag. And finally, I also learned that they have very little organization and likely no communication at all. This is the profile I developed within the first 30 seconds of seeing the enemy, and it helped me make smart decisions throughout the rest of the game. Keep in mind, this profile that I create constantly evolves and adapts throughout the game as I see the enemies behaving in different situations. So that's really all I wanted to talk about for enemy psychology in this video. I want to focus more on what's going on in your head. So let's get into that. So in my mind, the number one key in this area is staying calm and as relaxed as possible when trying to earn a chem strike. By being in a relaxed state, you allow your mind to make instinctive decisions for the basic things, such as aiming and shooting when you see an enemy. If you're really tense and you're focusing way too hard, you tend to put too much mental energy into these little things that shouldn't require much conscious thought at all for a somewhat experienced player. Conscious decisions take much longer than instinctive ones, and speed is very important in Call of Duty. This is why we do drills. We want to make the basic tasks come natural to us, so they just seem to happen automatically, and drills accelerate this process when you compare them to just playing. So instead of your brain thinking, there's an enemy on my screen, adjust aim by moving right thumbstick, press left trigger with left finger, then press right trigger with right finger. That all just happens naturally. Your brain has dealt with this situation thousands of times before, so it knows what to do. Don't get in the way of that streamlined action by overthinking it. That's not to say don't correct yourself if you notice your aim is off. Just in general, let your subconscious mind do most of the work for the simple tasks. This frees up a ton of your brain's processing power so you can focus on the more advanced metagame aspects like map control, positioning, and enemy prediction. If you've ever watched a live commentary or a live stream from one of those guys that seems to be able to earn chem strikes every single game that he plays, do you ever pay attention to his attitude and mental state in general? Most of these guys that I've seen play are very relaxed and they make it seem so easy because of this. Oftentimes they'll just be hanging out, listening to music while they pump out chem strike after chem strike. These guys have the raw talent and skills mastered. The only things they need to be spending mental energy on most of the time is the general flow of the game and getting into the right position. Their subconscious mind and muscle memory does the rest. The hard part about getting to this point is learning to master these skills first. And I'll be completely honest with you, there's no overnight solution to this. This is going to take hundreds, if not thousands of hours of playtime. Okay, so one last thing I want to talk about in this area is what happens to all of us when we realize we're getting really close to that chem strike. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've probably experienced this before. Your heart starts pounding harder and faster, and you get a big rush of adrenaline. If you don't know how to handle this, it can easily get you killed, and for a lot of people, it's the #1 thing that's holding them back from earning a chem strike. So when you get to this point, your brain almost immediately goes into an excited and somewhat panicked state. You're likely going to be thinking to yourself, I only need X number of kills to earn this chem strike, I'm getting so close, this is really exciting, I have to do whatever I can to stay alive and make sure I earn this chem. Try to suppress those thoughts and remain as calm and collected as possible. I find it's best not to count the number of kills you need because it can be really easy to psych yourself out at this point. Most of my chems are usually a little bit of a surprise when I earn them. I of course know that I'm close most of the time, but I almost never think to myself, this next kill is kill number 25. By ignoring the exact number I'm at, I can keep my focus on the game and just continue to play it smart. As soon as I get that rush of adrenaline at around 20 kills, I just try to focus all of my mental energy on setting myself up to win my next gunfight. Another useful strategy that I find helps me avoid psyching myself out when I'm getting close to a chem strike is I'll set a challenge for myself to reach a 30 or a 35 kill streak. This makes it so I'm not panicking nearly as much while I approach the 25 kill streak because 25 kills is now just a stepping stone to my real goal rather than being the goal itself. This is just a little mind trick that is actually incredibly effective as long as you actually make it so your true goal is to earn that 35 or 30 kill streak or whatever it may be. You can't fool your brain if it's still in the back of your mind that you just want that chem. So that's all I have for this final episode of KEM Tactics. I really hope this series has helped you or will help you in the future on your road to earning chem strikes effectively. If you enjoyed, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.